Why, thank you, Gilbert. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How is everyone today?
Fantastic.
It's beautiful, cold Cleveland weather. I came through a rainstorm as I came in, so
Really?
yes. So once I hit Lake Cuyahoga County, it stopped. It wasn't raining anymore, so that was helpful. This morning, our monthly theme is Playing with Paradox. And our weekly topic title is Getting Comfortable with Discomfort. Now that sounds interesting, doesn't it? And let's give Gilbert a hand for his wonderful prelude. Gets us warmed up here. And if you will, just get comfortable as I do the invocation. Infinite Spirit, in whom we live, move, and have our being, I acknowledge the presence and power of God. This presence, this power, this activity of Spirit is right now active at Miracle Center for Spiritual Living. It is active in each and every speaker, it's active in me, it's active in our minister today, Reverend Teresa Slusher. Is active in Reverend June Clark, active in our greeter and usher, in our musician, in our Zoom tech, and all those that work on the snacks for after service. I just know that God is active in each and every person that comes to us on Zoom, through the electronics and wonderment. And I just give thanks as I release this invocation into the ethers, knowing that we are safe, we are sound, and we are taken care of in this day. And if you're in agreement with me, please say with me, and so it is, and so I let it be. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome again to Miracle Center for Spiritual Living. On South Taylor near Fairmount Boulevard in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. To live out loud in every area of life, we have to have been exploring paradox. Paradoxes are a natural part of life, and then there are polarities that exist in our lives. Attachment to one perspective or another often causes suffering. We must be willing to remain open to understanding alternative perspectives and then find a third way that encompasses the positive benefits of all aspects of seeming polarity. Let's learn to get comfortable as we get outside our comfort zone and find the opposite of an absolute truth is not a falsehood, but rather another absolute truth. Very interesting. Affirmation. I am open to possibility as I discover multiple perspectives. Can you say that with me? I am open to possibility as I discover multiple perspectives. It's a lot to think about, isn't it? And from the science of mind point of view, Ernest Holmes was very clear that we are spiritual beings living a human experience. Yet so often we get caught up in seeing from only one perspective that we miss what it means. If we are so focused on oneness and the big picture that we miss opportunities to reach out and love and support one another, then we are not embracing the totality of our humanity. And if we get caught up in the suffering and challenges of living in the world that we forget our divinity, then we are missing out on the joy of being infinite and eternal. Science of Mind asks that when we embrace the polarity of humanity and divinity and find a third way to navigate our lives. Boy, this is something that we just have to read and sort of let simmer. And now we have a song coming up, Fearless Soul, Believe by Fearless Soul.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for the invocation and warming us up. And I give thanks for this wonderful song. We are living out loud, and we have to keep in mind that we're not the only ones living out loud in our universe today. So keep this in mind as we go through today's lesson. Again, I'm excited to be here, as I always am, to be surrounded with on Zoom, and even though I'm not there physically, I know I'm being surrounded by loving people, a loving community. And so this gives me the encouragement to carry on, to move forward in our science of mind. And last Sunday, we talked about paradoxes. And if you were able to tune in, you know that it was enlightening, to say the least, because paradoxes are a natural part of life. And you know, like you have to spend money to make money, and you don't risk anything if you don't risk, or you don't risk anything if you don't risk everything, something like that, one of those paradoxes. And we learn to embrace and develop the paradox mindset, right? Well, today we're going to look at polarities that exist in our lives as well, and that opposites that can and many times do create conflict. Keep in mind, again, that we are in a world with more than just ourselves. So it might become a little uncomfortable as we delve into this area of life. No one that I know really enjoys opposition and conflict. I don't. And I would think that others don't either. It's just not comfortable. So we live our lives trying to avoid so much conflict as we can. And we jump on one side or the other and quietly stay there. Or if we risk speaking out, we invite that conflict. But what if we can learn to embrace opposition and conflict enough so that we might be able to find some comfort when we come across opposing views? Well, let's face it, we live in a world of polarity. In fact, there is a law of polarity, and this law that states that this law actually states that there is a can y'all hear me okay? Thumbs up. Oh, all right, great. For some reason I felt like there was a problem with the sound. So there's this law of polarity, and this law actually states that there is an opposite for everything in our world, and that this is necessary for balance within our universe. Balance, keep this in mind too. Everything has a duality and a built-in opposite that cannot exist without the other. Well, that's comforting right there, knowing that we're able to accept the truth that polarity is all around us and it occurs in nature naturally. So we find opposing positive and negative charges in atoms, and positive negative fields and magnetic forces. Magnets, they either repel or attract. We've got the North and the South Pole. They're situated on opposite sides of our planet, and we discover opposing forces wherever we go. Rivers flow and then a dam occurs. And even the flow of traffic has sudden stops, and we call that a different kind of dam, right? Fact is, we all have certain beliefs, ideas, and perspectives. And we are attracted to our beliefs, our ideas, and our perspectives. And then there are others' beliefs, ideas, and perspectives that repel us. We too are like that magnetic force that attracts and repels. The challenge we face is when we think our way is the right way, the only way, and even our demeanor speaks volumes when we silently communicate using our body language that it's either my way or the highway. I know I personally have been accused of my way or the highway, which makes me seem bossy and inflexible. When my children were young, they certainly thought I was bossy. Orders were given, take out the garbage, clean up your room. No, you can't do that. And we tend to think we know better because we are the parent. I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but maybe you can, being bossy, especially with your kids. Well, when my oldest son was growing up, he started blurting out, "You're not the boss of me." He would say that when I asked him to clean up his room or put his things away. I later learned that he was actually watching and hearing this, mimicking his behavior that he learned from a kids show that aired on television. Well, I told him, I said, "You're right. I'm not the boss of you, but I am your mom. And you live in my house, and I set the rules, and you follow." So, see, sometimes I felt I was pretty valid in being the boss. However, today I've learned to relax, and that even though my children and I have opposing views, their views are just as valid as mine. That I'm not always right, and I'm not their ultimate authority. I think I might have realized this helped me. When I realized this, it kind of helped me to begin to really listen to another's point of view with respect. As a youngster myself, I would shut out my parents, and adults would shut me out. I mean, have you ever been told, "I don't want to hear it"? So our views actually, they live in our heads. That's where we hold our views, up here in our mind. And the good news is we can change our views or we can hold on to them. All of our views, like I said, are formulated in the mind. And for every mind there are infinitesimal points of view. Imagine 9 billion, 8 billion people on this planet and all of the different differing views that we have. There are, of course, shared views, and there are, of course, opposing views. We don't always see eye to eye with our spouses, our friends, our siblings, our parents, our teachers, our kids. And these opposing views can lead to behaviors that are damaging and harmful to another. They can cause separation, division, dominance, and even insubordination. This is because judgment also lives in our heads. We judge others as wrong when we think we are right. And the worst of it, all of it, is that when we become attached to our own perspective, it causes suffering. So we suffer. Our language, our way of moving through the world, the questions we ask one another, and the ways that we seek meaning in our lives all lend themselves to standing on one side of a polarity. We like to play what I call the either or game. We like to play the either or game in life. And there is nothing wrong with what we choose to identify with, but we like to pick sides, especially the winning side. So we fight to be right. You might want to ask, are you a morning person or a night owl? And if you are around a bunch of night owls and you are a morning person, will you stay up till the wee hours of the night? Or will you call it a night and go to bed? Do you go along with everyone else's point of view? Here's a tough one. Are you a Democrat or a Republican? And if you are identify as a Republican, will you walk away from a group of Democrats, not listen to their views, their way of thinking? Are you right and are they wrong? And vice versa? I have a son who likes cats. We call him a cat person. He doesn't really like dogs at all. Of course, this makes him a cat person. The furring, views. And then yet, when we force ourselves or when we are forced into only one side of polarity, we begin to experience the effects of the overuse of that polarity, and we hunker down on one side or the other. Now, it can be fairly easy to shift back and forth between two polarities where we have little to lose. For example, my son, a cat person, if he were to meet someone who is a dog person and he was attracted to them, would he ask them out on a date? And then what if he falls in love with them? They're a dog lover. Would he be able to bend and be flexible and start to tolerate, accept, and even respect having a dog in his life? When there is love involved, it becomes a little bit easier to shift and change not only our perspective, but our behavior. Love does seem to conquer adversity. However, shifting our ideas and views become more challenging when there is more to lose. We have invested our time, our money, and our energy into our point of view. And when we do that, we are not likely to make a shift. And God help us if we have to make a drastic shift because things have become nearly impossible when something we have identified with is no longer working for us. This can happen in any area of our life. It can happen in our relationships, our chosen career, our political views, our views on the opposite sex, children, the elderly, even our various food brands, our personal care products, and even the laundry detergent we've been using for years. What if you find out that the brands you've been using are actually damaging our environment? But you've loved them for years. And now you are considering changing what you've loved for years to help the environment. There's a story that Brene Brown writes about in a book that she titled Atlas of the Heart. It's a very interesting story. It's about a social psychologist by the name of Leon Festinger. And he had two associates. Their names were Travers and Anderson. Now, they thought that they would do an experiment, a social experiment, and they decided to infiltrate what was called or considered back in 1954 a doomsday cult. Now, their idea was to see what would happen when the leader's prophecy failed to be fulfilled. Now, the leader of the cult had promised her followers that the world would end on December 21st of 1954, and that her followers would be picked up by a flying saucer and transported to safety at midnight on December 20th. Well, Travers and Anderson found that many of her followers quit their jobs, gave away their houses, and dispersed all of their savings in anticipation of the end. I mean, really, who needs money in outer space, right? Well, there were some that waited in fear or resignation. They didn't really want to give up their homes or their money, but they kind of like waited in fear anyway to see if this spaceship was really going to come and pull them out. Well, Festinger, he predicted that the believers who had not made a strong commitment to the prophecy would quietly lose their faith in the leader when the world didn't end. However, those who had given away their possessions and waited with other believers for the spaceship Well, they would double down, they would hunker down on their belief in her mystical abilities. He also predicted that even if the prophecy did not materialize, the followers who lost the most would demonstrate their increased commitment by doing whatever they could to get others to join them. At the time, this hypothesis blew the doors off of every existing theory about motivation and human behavior. It was unthinkable that people would double down once proven wrong. Why would they, right? But by 4:45 a.m., when the spaceship was a no-show, their leader showed a new vision of the world. And because of their strong faith, those that really had a commitment, she told them those that had a strong faith were spared. As hypothesized by Fessinger, the most invested members responded by calling the media with the great news, and they became even more invested evangelists for the group. Well, luckily, the doomsday leader's prediction failed, but Fessinger's predictions didn't. And he helped us to change the way we think about human behavior. Now, could you imagine giving up everything you own, your house, your land, your money, just because your views are right? But we do this all the time. We are willing to go to so much of an extreme as we hunker down on our side that we could even end up jailed by those who oppose us. Like in Nelson Mandela's case, where he led a long struggle against apartheid in South Africa. He was arrested on several occasions and stood trial 4 times. He spent over 27 years in prison. How his life could have been different if everyone were willing to just stop and listen to both sides, all the valid views of everyone involved, to have a win-win and not to have arrested Nelson in the first place. And how horrible is it that we are even willing to kill each other over our opposing views? Today, we see how prevalent in our society is when we argue for our views. We see this behavior again in our politics, our views on immigration. We can look at abortion, our spiritual beliefs, religion, our cultural views, everything. Often, rather than opening to the vulnerability of being wrong, self-assessing and changing our views, we double down on our side of the polarity. We overly focus on the benefits of our side, even if we no longer are experiencing those benefits. And we push away the other side. We cite its overuse and its problems, even as we long for the benefits that the other side could possibly bring. It seems that our entire society is based on picking a side. And once we have chosen our side, whether it is a preference, a belief system, a way of thinking, or a call to action, we then begin to see only the benefits of our side. And then we look at only the defects of what we consider the other side. It's true. We can see this in every major debate worldwide of our times right now. So what if there really isn't a wrong way or a right way of seeing and doing things? No one way is totally wrong or totally right. An investment in my way doesn't make it right. An investment in your way doesn't make it right. My way is not perhaps the better way, and vice versa. Now, maybe there's a better way, but a better way comes from being open to learning and to seeing things from a different perspective. So if we are to create a world that works for everyone, then perhaps we must be willing to remain open at the top, open to understanding alternative perspectives, and then find a third way. The third way that can encompass the positive benefits of all aspects, of both ways, of the seeming polarity. And we might say, well, what could this third way be? What would a third way look like? What would it really look like when we stop forcing ourselves into a single side of polarity? Instead of taking sides or swinging back and forth between one side or the other, let's take a look at a third way. A third way actually requires vulnerability. The vulnerability of looking at what is no longer working and being open to seeing the benefits from the opposing side. Instead of pushing it away, open up. Find that maybe perhaps that view is an interesting way of looking. Now, I know it can be challenging. It can be challenging, and no one's asking you to change your beliefs, but perhaps change your view. And when you change your view, you might change your belief. You might change the way you label things. You might change your ideas. You might even begin to identify differently. Identify to find a middle ground that utilizes the benefits of both sides of that polarity without suffering. For instance, let's say you're an introvert or an extrovert. Now, the greatest introverts need time with people, whether that is out in public or a small group or one-on-one. And even the most outgoing extroverts need some alone time. When we consider a third way, we might look at the blessings that show up in the most unexpected ways. Well, for instance, the many great lessons we've learned during COVID. COVID has shown us different ways of approaching our life. During COVID, introverts have actually learned that they can have too much alone time. And I'm pretty much an extrovert. And coming out of COVID, after I secluded myself in my home for months, I became comfortable being away from interacting in society. Yet when I started going back out into society after the lockdown, I found an awkwardness in my social skills. I felt uncomfortable. Do I fist bump, shake hands, or hug? I didn't know what to do. Or maybe I don't do anything at all when I'm greeting my friends. However, as an extrovert, my benefits during the lockdown were immense. I was actually able to gain more time in self-care. I was able to find opportunities for more rest. And I was able to spend more time in prayer and meditation. A third way is actually a balance. To navigate, it was actually a time to find that I could be by myself and to be with others. It was a time where I could navigate and discover benefits from both sides, from living an introvert life and being an extrovert. A third way is being able to be open at the top and learn from one another. and not be so invested in our point of view that we lose track of what is important. The importance of collectively coming together and creating a world that works for everyone, where we utilize all the benefits, where we have great friendships, family life, where we feel supported and are supportive in all areas of life, is the third way. There's a gentleman by the name of Brian Emerson. He wrote a book called Navigating Polarities. He promotes using both and thinking, and that using both and thinking leads us to transformation. In fact, that's the title of his book, Navigating Polarities, Using Both and Thinking to Lead Transformation. In his book, he writes that standing in the third way is a practice. It relies on a way of being and doing what most of us were never taught. It requires self-awareness, conscious choice, and courageous action. It also requires that we get a little comfortable in being uncomfortable. Back in 1916, back in 2016, we had a major political divide in our country. I mean, we might have been politically divided before, but it really surfaced and really roared its ugly head back in 2016, as I recall. People were actually losing friends, and families were falling apart. Well, out of this division, an organization by the name of Braver Angels was founded. I was introduced to this organization by someone that was excited about the organization. When I was introduced to the point of where I just knew about it, but I never really participated in any of its activities. But what I discovered just recently, because I like, what was Braver Angels really all about? So I went in and I started doing some research, and I became really enthralled and found it very attractive. And what I found is that it actually offers a way for Americans with different backgrounds to connect as people and as citizens who are concerned for their country. And it was actually formulated back then. It's based in New York City as a 501c3 nonprofit. So again, it's dedicated to political depolarization. What I found is that the organization runs workshops, it'll run debates and other events where red conservative and blue liberal participants attempt to better understand one another's positions and discover their shared values. Its stated mission is to bring Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. Well, I found that very interesting, and I thought, well, what else does this organization do? This organization has actually grown to include more than just political views. Today, it also offers online courses, e-courses, where you can gain a greater understanding, and it also offers opportunities where you can engage with another one-on-one, another person, where it's just you and another having a conversation around various polarity lifestyles, such as someone who lives in an urban setting connects with someone who lives in a rural setting. Well, I kind of grew up in an urban setting, and I'm living in a rural setting. And I thought, people around here think a little bit differently than when I was growing up. So I thought that was interesting. What if I had a one-on-one conversation through this organization? And I saw what people in this rural setting really believe. And also you can have a conversation across generations. They offer the opportunity to have a conversation. Let's say if you're 18 to 30 years old, you would be paired up with someone that's 61 years old or over. Now that would be an interesting conversation. I am over 61. And I'd love to have a conversation with someone that's 18 to 30 to see what their views are in their life. And you can also engage in conversations on race, ethnicity, and cultural differences, and even your political preferences. Well, wouldn't it be interesting to engage one on one with someone that has a different political view than yourself? Understand, though, it's not about taking sides, but it's about seeing other points of view in a safe space without judgment, without being judged, without judging them. It's actually a sincere effort to bridge the divide. It's the separation and division that we have been experiencing in our communities that create the animosity, the hate, the ideas that we need to fight one another. So you can sign up for any of these activities. I'm planning on signing up. I think you can like join for a minimum of $12 and you can participate in any of the activities. It's a 501c3 charity, so you can actually give a little bit more than that $12. I would love to engage with another to see their point of view in a safe, non-judgmental environment. So if you would like to discover another side of life, you might be interested in looking at this organization as well. I invite you to maybe just Google Braver Angels and see what you can discover for yourself. The truth is, we're living in times where we need to come together and we need to end the division. What came alive in 2016 seems to be put to rest if we want to bring our country united together. And we have a reading. So I do believe we have Reverend June coming up to give us a reading for our lesson today.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good to be here. Our reading this morning is from the Science Mind magazine, page 48. Do your best every day, and your life will gradually expand into satisfying fullness. And that's from Horatio W. Dresser. Remember, the kingdom of heaven is already in us. We are in it. It is only as we are in harmony with it that we awaken to it. God is perfect. The universe is foolproof. Everything is right, no matter what it looks like. What are the little chagrins, the little cares, the pettinesses of today? The kingdom of heaven is bigger and broader and deeper and wider, and such peace as anyone possesses in the world comes from a consciousness or unconsciousness, acquiescence with the universe, a non-combative, that probably should be are non-combative toward it. God does not have to forgive, for God is eternal forgiveness. But everything that we understand between each other will be forgiven. I do not know when such understanding will come to the world so that nations will be able to lay down their arms. But everything that is in line with unity is in the process of winning. Ideas for Living, page 61-62. Here Holmes moves from little chagrins to world peace with the understanding that as an individual's inner life changes, everything is free to move. When one of us forgives and makes peace, that's one more place where concord instead of conflict happens. God at the level of expression we think of as undivided wholeness, does not and cannot judge, and therefore does not need to forgive its own contemplations. People at the level of expression we think of as personality can thrush about with judgments and necessary amends until they come into alignment with the beginning divine idea. That idea, everything is all right, and that we have access to the wisdom to keep it so. We have the final say in reality because it is constructive, inclusive, and it just works. I'm going to read an affirmation and once, and then I will repeat it slowly so that we can read it together, say it together. There is nothing in me that can doubt that good will make its appearance in my experience. If you would repeat after me, there is nothing in me. I'm going to say it again. Just repeat it after me. There is nothing in me that can doubt that good will make its appearance
Will make it appear
in my experience.
in my
And so it is.
All right. Thank you, Reverend June. Whew. So, there is nothing in me that can doubt that good will make its appearance in my experience. We do live an individual inner life. And when we change, everything changes. And we find that everything is free to move as it is, without judgment. When we are forgiving and loving, we are more tolerant, we are more accepting and respectful. And isn't that what we want when we have our views? We want people to tolerate them, accept them, and respect them. Wouldn't it be wiser to tolerate, accept, and respect another's point of view if you want your view to be accepted and respected? So here's the thing. Just breathe. Just breathe. As I invite you to take a moment and listen to the following song, just breathe and know that everything is already all right with the world, and that the only thing that needs to change is us. So let's go ahead and sit back and listen. Thank you, Chris, for playing that for us. And no matter where you are when faced in conflict and opposition, there is definitely one thing you can do, and that is to stop and breathe. Yeah. Stop and breathe. And then realize that perhaps your point of view isn't the only view. And find interest in another's point of view. Even if you have to say, that's an interesting point of view. And no judgment. I'm not out to correct anyone. You're not out to be corrected. But imagine what a friendlier world we would be in if we just stop and breathe and listen with an open heart and open mind to another's point of view. If we all did that, perhaps we could find peace in our world. So here's the deal, right? We are playing in a world of paradoxes and polarities, and it does have its challenges, right? We are learning to hold gently to our beliefs and our ideas and even our identity as we assess what is working and not working in our life. Look at the areas in your life where you're holding tightly to one polarity and villainizing the other. And look, stop and look for that third way. Breathe and stop and look for that third way that utilizes the benefits of both aspects. A third way thinking can easily be implemented in our lives, individually and even collectively. We are geniuses. We have been created by the great divine mind that creates all things in its image. We too are geniuses, and we can create a world that works for everyone. We can find solutions to the big challenges that the world is facing today if we would just stop and remember to breathe and give each other that allowance. We're going to go ahead and take this into prayer. So I invite you to, if you would like to, just close your eyes and know that there is that one divine source that sources all, that one great divine intelligence. And breathe. Breathe in and breathe out this truth, this knowingness, that this one divine source created all things, all beings, everything. And that everything is right in this world, that this divine source is the source of all things, all beings. And I speak my word knowing that in the spoken word there is power, and so I see, feel, and know that everything is in divine right order as we open our minds and our hearts to the realization that we are all one, living this human experience that has been divinely ordained to come together collectively for the greater good, for all of humanity, as we allow ourselves to embrace in the joy and in the beauty of this paradise, of this life, this place, this state of mind, this beingness of beauty, love, joy, peace, and harmony. And in this allowance, I give thanks knowing that we do already live in a world that has been created for us as we create more and more good in this thing we call life. For this, I give thanks. And if you are in agreement with me, please declare this truth. Let us lock it in, anchor it in to the consciousness of our minds and our hearts by stating, and so it is. All right, I believe we have some announcements.
Thank you, Reverend Teresa, for that wonderful, wonderful service. Let's give her a round of applause. The wonderful music. Just give me a second to breathe. Take in the lesson. Father, we just give thanks for this time that we've had together, and we know that we are blessed. Reverend Teresa is blessed. Our reader today, Reverend June, is blessed. Our ushers and greeters are blessed. Our pianist is blessed. Our Zoom tech. We are all blessed. And as we give thanks, we just let it be. And if you're in agreement with me, you can say with me, and so it is.
So it is.
And so I let it be. Amen and amen and amen. Oh boy, that is so invigorating. Our announcements for this week. The discussions of Keys to Wisdom is going to be on Thursday again from 1:30 to 2:30. And of course, we have our podcast. You just go out there and take a look at them. And I guess we can just gather up for the peace song because that's our program for today. So, I just give thanks, and so it is, everyone.